Naslednja govorka Stephanie Hubold je predstavnica fundacije Ellen MacArthur, pomembne sooblikovalke politik krožnega gospodarstva. Misija te fundacije je pospeševanje prehoda v krožno gospodarstvo s sodelovanjem s podjetji, vladami, akademiki, ter s ciljem zgraditi tak gospodarski model, ki bo že po samem dizajnu sposoben obnavljanja. Stephanie Hubold vodi program za sodelovanje z nacionalnimi in lokalnimi oblastmi, ki se osredotoča na podporo javnim ustanovam pri prehodu v krožno gospodarstvo. Odgovorna je za projekt svežnja orodij za oblikovalce politik. Krožno gospodarstvo opisuje kot potovanje. Izvolite, gospa Hubold, beseda je vaša.
We are at the beginning of a journey. A journey, what comes to your mind? A journey is exciting, isn't it? It's about exploring, learning, getting somewhere new. A journey also involves uncertainty. It can expose you to situations you're not familiar with, you don't know how to deal with. That can be scary at times. A journey is never fully predictable. But what's important, we can prepare for it. Define your destination. Know where you want to get to. Acquire the knowledge. Get the equipment, get fit. Prepare for success. The journey we are talking about today is a bit different from my usual hiking tours. The journey we're talking about today is nothing less than transforming the way our economy works. This is how our current economy looks like, inherited from the Industrial Revolution. We take, we make, we use, and then we dispose of stuff. Products are designed with little or no consideration of a product's recovery past first use. Production heavily relies on new, cheap, virgin materials. And despite great strides have been made to increase production efficiency, any system based on consumption rather than on the restorative use of resources entailed significant losses along the value chain. Today's linear economy is still very water, energy, and material intense. And although we've also seen great efforts to increase recycling rates, today's end-of-pipe recycling, that is, recycling without changing the design in the first place, only captures a fraction of the potential value. In Europe, in value terms, material recycling and waste-based energy recovery capture only 5% of the original raw material value. There are various factors that make us believe that change is necessary and possible. The challenges include price risks. The linear extractive model exposes a company's future profitability to resource price increases and, importantly, resource price volatility. The last decade has seen higher price volatility for metals and agricultural outputs than any single decade of the 20th century. There are supply risks. Europe is the world's largest net importer of resources. We import 6 times as much resources as we export. The EU has listed 20 materials as critical in terms of their security of supply, like magnesium, indium, phosphate rock. At the same time, the depletion of low-cost reserves and the degradation of our natural systems significantly impact the productivity of our economy. Loss of biodiversity, climate change, soil degradation, ocean pollution are getting ever more evident. And these trends are likely to continue and aggravate as 3 billion new middle-class consumers are expected to come online by 2030. One of the factors I wanted to highlight today are the surprisingly high levels of structural waste in our economy. In a recent study, we have analyzed 3 sectors that many of us would consider as mature and optimized. And let me ask you, how many of you own a car? Yeah? Then this might seem familiar. The average European car is parked 92% of the time. Further time is spent sitting in congestion, looking for a parking space, leaving only 5% for the actual driving. When the car is used, only 1.5 out of the 5 seats are occupied, and due to the high deadweight ratios, we love our big cars, do we? Only 1 to 2% of the energy get translated to actually transport people. Up to 50% of expensive inner city land are devoted to mobility infrastructure, while even during peak hours, only about 10% of the average European road is covered by cars. And we found a similar situation in the food system and in the built environment. About 1/3 of food is wasted along the value chain. And the average office is used only 35 to 50% of the time, even during working hours. At the same time, we see opportunities stemming from technology, Internet of Things, big data analytics, enable not only new forms of asset tagging and tracing, for example, in order to improve reverse logistics, but also enable new forms of sharing and financing. And there are advances in engineering, like 3D printing. We also see changing consumer attitudes and an uptake of new business models. We see consumers that increasingly favor access of ownership, thus becoming users. Sharing, rental, pay-per-performance schemes already find ready customers, and some of them experience exponential growth rates. At the same time, there are favorable regulatory trends. Recently, businesses have witnessed an increasing willingness on the part of regulators to price negative externalities, for example, through carbon emissions trading schemes and carbon tax. So, what is the model we're working towards? The circular economy is a model that is restorative and regenerative by design, and that ultimately seeks to decouple economic development from virgin resource consumption. In this model, products, components, parts, materials circulate at the highest value and utility at all times. It designs out waste, with materials re-entering the economy as defined, valuable, either technical or biological nutrients. And this system is based on 3 simple principles. Between natural systems and the economy, preserve and enhance natural capital by controlling the amount of finite stocks entering the economy and balancing renewable resource flows. Within the economy, maximize the yield out of every unit of resource. And third, across all systems, foster effectiveness by revealing and designing out negative externalities. The circular economy represents a significant savings opportunity. We have recently launched a report called Growth Within, a Circular Economy Vision for a Competitive Europe. It's a work we've done together with the Deutsche Post Foundation and Stiftungsfonds für Umwelt, Ökonomie und Nachhaltigkeit in Germany, as well as McKinsey. And we analyzed circular economy opportunities for 3 core human needs. That is mobility, food, and the built environment. For a 2030 scenario, the authors found an opportunity to decrease the total cost of ownership associated with these 3 sectors by 1.8 trillion euros per year. that is 25% of the total cost today. And just to put that into perspective, 1.8 trillion, that is as much as the entire GDP of the European tourism and travel industry, for example. These costs split as follows. Resource costs are 600 billion down, capital and labor costs 700 billion, and importantly, societal and external costs, that is costs for accidents, pollution, congestion, 500 billion. Technology alone will bring these costs down. The current development path will decrease total cost of ownership by 900 billion. That is half of the total impact. But the circular economy, as it's a more systemic approach, provides better results and lower rebound effects. And I'll explain those circular economy scenarios in a bit. Feeding the circular economy scenario into an economic equilibrium model translates into 7% additional GDP by 2030 compared to the current development path. It also translates into 10% additional household disposable income for the average European household. The circular economy can also greatly enhance the environment and boost resilience. CO2 emissions could drop as much as 48% compared to today's level, meaning that the EU could attain their carbon commitments 20 years early. And similarly, primary material consumption could drop by nearly 1/3. So what are the scenarios we've looked at? For mobility, we're envisioning a mobility system that is a multimodal system where autonomous electric cars only provide the flexible last-mile solution, where mobility is offered as a service and the high utilization rates incentivize a producer to design to last, maintain, and remanufacture. In food, we would not only see higher production efficiencies and reduction of waste levels, for example, through precision agriculture, but we would see a system that closes the nutrient loops and creates markets for byproducts and what today is considered as waste. We'd also see better access to high-quality food, for example, through shorter supply chains enabled by urban and peri-urban farming and less use of chemicals. In the built environment, we are looking at value engineering, a more industrialized approach to construction, for example, using prefabricated modules or going even one step further and 3D printing on site. A change in the design of buildings, using more durable, more recyclable materials, going for modular interior design, passive architecture, and constructing buildings as resource banks. We'd also see higher rates of sharing, repurposing, multi-purposing of buildings, ultimately leading to unlocking valuable inner city land. What is it concretely that businesses can do? We use the following framework in order to analyze the circular economy opportunities. And this framework translates the circular economy principles into more tangible levers for businesses. And the 6 action areas are the following. Regenerate is about shift to renewables and recovering the health of ecosystems. Sharing is about intensifying asset use. Think of sharing cars, sharing flats. Optimize is about increasing the performance of products, but also removing waste from production and supply chains. Think, for example, of Toyota and their lean philosophy. Then looping is about keeping products and materials within closed loops and prioritizing inner loops. For the technical cycle, that means refurbishing and remanufacturing of products and components and recycling of materials. And for the biological cycle, that means anaerobic digestion and extracting biochemicals from organic matter. Then Virtualize is about dematerializing resource use by delivering utility virtually. For example, reading the newspaper on your smartphone instead of the printed copy. And then finally, exchange is all about innovation, applying new technologies like 3D printing and choosing new products and services like multimodal transport. The good news is a lot of that is already happening today. And this is an example for the built environment. How many of you have already stayed at an Airbnb? Yeah, that's very much in trend. So last New Year's Eve, about 500,000 people stayed at an Airbnb. With more than 1 million spaces listed, Airbnb is now the largest hotel chain in the world without having ever constructed a single building. Or looking at Dirt, thanks to Dirt's modular construction, about 80% of building components, like doors, shelves, walls, get reused and refurbished when moving into a new space. Or Chinese company Winsun that 3D printed 10 fully sized houses within 24 hours using a mixture of dry cement and construction waste, and that at a cost of less than $5,000 per house. And there are many more examples, both in the built environment and in other sectors. Obviously, there is also a role to play for government. Most of the circular economy solutions we've analyzed are bottom line positive. And as such, one would expect market actors to go for these solutions and implement them at scale. However, this is not what we see happening yet. Obviously, there are various barriers. We recently launched another report called Delivering the Circular Economy, a toolkit for policymakers, which is a step-by-step methodology for those policymakers who wish to embark on a circular economy transition. And core part of that methodology is to analyze the circular economy opportunities, identify the barriers hindering or holding them off, and then mapping the policy options in order to address these barriers. And the type of barriers that we've analyzed are 4 categories. It's about economic barriers, profitability, access to capital, access to technology, market failures, such as unaccounted externalities, imperfect information, regulatory failures, such as inadequately defined legal frameworks, enforcement failures, and regulatory spillovers from regulation that has been put in place for other purposes. Importantly, also social factors, such as lack of capabilities and skills, and custom and habit. And we made this toolkit actionable by taking into account the real-life constraints of a pilot country, that is Denmark. And let me share with you some key findings from that work. First, most circular economy solutions are hindered by non-financial barriers. It's more about high transaction costs, lack of access to capital for small and medium-sized enterprises, for example, split incentives, unintended consequences from regulation that had been put in place for other purposes and is now hindering circular economy solutions, and the social factors, especially lack of capabilities and skills. Secondly, a successful transition requires a multi-stakeholder approach. The close dialogue between government, businesses, and other societal stakeholders is key in order to align on a common direction early on, in order to leverage the expertise of all players in order to identify the highest value opportunities, and then to co-develop the implementation pathways. And along that whole journey, further demonstrate the benefits of circular economy and build capability. Third, and we've briefly heard about the European Circular Economy Package. Obviously, EU-level policy interventions need to complement national policies. And fourth, and that's maybe the bad news, there is no silver bullet. It requires a sector-by-sector approach and often policy packages to address only one of the barriers. And what you see on the chart are the different instruments that governments have at their disposal. We looked in this study at information and awareness, that is campaigns to businesses, to consumers, collaboration platforms, for example, in the area of R&D, industrial symbiosis, business support schemes, both financial and non-financial, for example, training, advisory, public procurement and investment, regulation, and this is not only about adding new regulation. Importantly, this is also about simplifying, clarifying, and adapting existing regulation. And fiscal frameworks, for example, reduced VAT for remanufactured products or higher landfill and incineration taxes. And next to these sector-specific instruments, there are economy-wide instruments that can help enable a systemic transition, such as realigned incentives, for example, shifting fiscal incentives from non-renewables to renewables, and education. It is crucial to educate the next generation of decision makers. And I won't have time today to deep dive on the role of education, but I would like to take the opportunity to make you aware of the Foundation's Disruptive Innovation Festival, which is an online festival around the question, the global economy is changing, what do we need to know, experience, and do? This festival has started yesterday and will run for the next 3 weeks. It's online, it's free, it's fun, and I can highly encourage you to register. And headline speakers are as diverse as Dr. Michael Braungart, pioneer of the cradle-to-cradle design concept, Robin Chase, co-founder of Zipcar, Ida Auken, MP and member of the World Economic Forum Circular Economy Meta Council, and Jyrki Katainen, Vice President of the European Commission, responsible for jobs, growth, investment, and competitiveness. Let me summarize. For a successful transition to a circular economy, we need a multi-stakeholder approach, a close dialogue between government, business, academia, and other societal stakeholders. Research has confirmed the positive effects a circular economy can have on GDP, on employment, on the environment. So the good news is we don't need to decide between economic competitiveness and employment on the one hand and environmental sustainability on the other hand. We can have it all, and they are mutually reinforcing. Finally, this transition is inevitable. It is the way to grow within our planetary boundaries. And it has started already. And I'm really excited to likely see Slovenia embarking on this journey as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hvala za to predstavitev, ki je zagotovo sprožila veliko vprašanj. Pa me zanima, a je kakšno vprašanje iz občinstva za gospod Stefani Hubold? Ne? Mogoče jaz za začetek zastavim eno, da se morda kdo od vas vmes opogumi. Govorite o potovanju in izrazili ste dobrodošlico Sloveniji na to potovanje. A je kakšno specifično orodje, ki ga Slovenija potrebuje za to potovanje? What would you recommend Slovenia? What tools to take to this journey?
Well, as I've mentioned, like from our experience, and we work with various countries across Europe and increasingly also in the US, it is really about this multi-stakeholder approach, about bringing together the different parties and also taking a multifunctional approach. And to start with, it's beneficial to focus on selected key sectors, develop a strategy there, build up expertise, and then really address it from a very holistic perspective, looking at the policies, as I outlined, supporting pioneering businesses, fostering innovation, and also looking at education and how to build awareness across the board.
Thank you. Kakšno vprašanje z vaše strani? Super. Gospodična v tretji vrsti.
Hello, I'm Nina from the Party of Slovenia. I have a question. I'm not an expert on this field, but I heard at the beginning that Slovenia is lagging under the EU average. And then the commissioner stated that actually we're leading the way, coming from 28 to 61%. So I'm a little bit confused where we stand, what's the current state in Slovenia. I mean, I don't know if you're aware of it, but just a question.
I must admit I'm not an expert on the Slovenian statistics, and especially given the audience, I wouldn't dare to come up with a statement on the State of the Union. I think what's important, we had briefly heard about the recycling statistics, and I think what's important is that is obviously not all. So there are a variety of indicators to look at, and I have mentioned before, to us really recycling, for example, is only in a way the loop of last resort. So it's much more about going to these inner loops, prioritizing reuse, refurbishing, remanufacturing, as that is able to capture much more value of the production and supply chain than going for these outer loops. So I think no matter where the recycling rate stands, I would encourage everyone to look at the broader level of indicators.
Še eno vprašanje v drugi vrsti, gospa Ladeja.
Hello, my name is Ladeja Godina-Košir from Giacomelli Media. I'm happy that we host you here. Hopefully Slovenia will join Ellen MacArthur Foundation, and I would like to ask you, how can we profit for that? It is very straightforward, but how shall we organize as the country, as the participant of Ellen MacArthur Foundation, to exchange as much as possible the knowledge, the experience, best practices?
Well, now you raised kind of the topic of the C100, so maybe for everyone's benefit, the C100 is a foundation's international platform bringing together large corporations, but also emerging innovators that bring a unique service or technology to the circular economy, together with pioneering universities and governments and city representatives, in order to exchange best practices and work together on pre-competitive collaboration initiatives. And I think in the case of Slovenia, if Slovenia decided to join that group, I think it's really about very actively participating, very actively taking the opportunity to share best practices, to enter into a dialogue with peers, to learn from the international expertise and experience that we have in that group. I think it's as simple as that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we have to stop here.
Thank you.